Here we go.
Okay, I will go ahead and call to order this hearing of August 31st, 2023 in the matter of case file Z0208-23, Thimbleberry Farm. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the county's hearings officer. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow, so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing. I start by saying I am not a county employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the Board of Commissioners. I say that so you know you're getting a somewhat independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct public hearings and make decisions about certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with the Board of Commissioners and Planning Commission to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As a hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker, and I believe I am unbiased with regard to the application before me today. I've not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. But anyone has the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. Staff will start by asking staff to summarize the online hearing process so everyone understands how you can work with the technology to participate in the hearing, and then they'll summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county's website. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. At this point, there is nobody else online, but if anybody shows up and wants to say something about this application in support, in opposition, or with questions or concerns, they may do so. Then once everybody's had an initial opportunity to testify, I will give staff and the applicant alone an opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include any new evidence and anybody else showed up to testify, I'll give everybody a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and announce what I'm going to do. Generally, I will issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the record. We'll send my decision to the county. The county will send it to party to record, so anybody who testifies orally or in writing before the close of the record will be sure and receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. Any person with an interest in this application may offer relevant oral or written testimony. The testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria. Also, it's important that everybody make their best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county, but may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. However, LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me. And if the applicant wants to object to any conditions of approval on constitutional grounds, they must raise those objections before me as well. If anyone feels they need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open or continue the hearing for any other purpose, you must make that request before the close of the hearing today. Also, my decision must comply with state law that requires that I issue a final written decision within 150 days after this application was filed. So there's some limit to how long I can continue the hearing or hold the record open. When you testify, please begin by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone else, please say so. But that concludes my introduction. Laura, do you want to start us out?
Sure. If we have nobody in the audience, should I still read the script on how to participate in today's
Don't think you
hearing?
need to, no. Good point.
Perfect. And Darcy, you can confirm there's nobody in the wings.
Well, it says there's one attendee, but there's no names or anything listed.
Well, I can say it just to be sure if we want.
Why don't we? Yeah,
Okay.
if they
I
raise
think
their
as a
hand,
matter of process, we probably should.
Sure.
yeah.
No problem. Alrighty, this public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county's website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will use the raise hand feature. For attendees on a PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, either at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. Staff will call upon you when it's time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you've provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email your testimony to myself at mlord@clackamas.us, mlord@clackamas.us, or you can mail it to the Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, Oregon 97045. My contact email address is also available on the webpage where you found the link for today's hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's written decision. If you do not wish to testify, but you would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address, either to myself by email or by entering it into the Zoom chat function during today's hearing. And with that, if you're ready, I will begin my presentation.
Go ahead,
Perfect. I've prepared a PowerPoint today, so I'll quickly share my screen and we can go through it. So today, I apologize, it's not a conditional use, but this is a home occupation exception land use application that we're reviewing for property at the corner of Kelso Road and Frank Avenue, which is located just southeast of Boring at 29089 Southeast Kelso Road. The property itself is around 5 acres in size, and it is zoned exclusive farm use. The applicant is proposing to operate a home occupation to have educational programming or classes to promote farming and agricultural uses. This is a level 3 major home occupation, which again is to operate educational events like field trips or workshops, promoting the farm and ag industry and farming processes. The business operations will occur substantially within the dwelling. So day-to-day operations will be in the home, such as the office space. And then the teachings and educational component will occur primarily either within a attached garage or under the covered porch, all associated with the dwelling. Home occupations in the exclusive farm use zone are subject to ZDO section 822. This is a level 3 major home occupation level 3 major home occupation is able to be established if at least half of the lots surrounding the subject property are larger than 2 acres in size. In this case, they are. And the applicant is requesting a few exceptions to some of the standards in section 822 of the ZDO, which requires the review of a type 3 land use application where the hearings officer is the decision authority. And so I'm not going to go through all of the standards of section 822 specifically because the staff report outlines why staff has found compliance with nearly all of the criteria. And what I will do instead is talk today about the exceptions to those certain criteria that have been requested by the applicant. So the applicants requested 3 exceptions to the standards of section 822. And I'll go into detail on each of these, but the 3 of them include not having external evidence of the home occupation. The second one is about the amount of dwelling space that's being used for the home occupation. And then lastly, the standard that limits the number of vehicles that are associated with the home occupation that are allowed on site at any given time. So those are the 3 exceptions to section 822 that the applicants requested. The approval criteria for exceptions are provided in section ZDO 822-05. Generally speaking, they talk about maintaining the character of the neighborhood or not disrupting the character of the neighborhood. And that could be from noise or traffic, things of that nature. They also look at how we're going to mitigate any of those potentially harmful or intrusive impacts that could occur from the exception that's being requested. We also need to look at services, making sure there are adequate services to serve the use proposed. So water, sewer, roadway improvements, things of that nature. And then lastly, section 822.05 includes a list of specific items that cannot be granted an exception to. And luckily, the applicant is not requesting any of these prohibited items. So for those reasons, we've reviewed the application for home occupation with 3 exceptions. So like I said, the first exception relates to having no external evidence of the home occupation. Now, the applicant's requesting to have a seating area for participants of the educational program to sit under the covered porch. And the covered porch evidently would be visible outside of the dwelling. So that's our first evidence of external evidence of the home occupation. Additionally, the participants would be invited to walk through the farm that's on the property. While the majority of the educational component will be happening either within the attached garage or under the covered porch, there will be some external evidence. And so for those reasons, the applicant's has requested an exception to that standard. The second exception that's being requested relates to the amount of space that the amount of the dwelling space that can be used for the home occupation. So the standard says you can use an incidental use of the home can be used for the occupation. And so in this case, that would be limited to 500 square feet. Now, the way the math checks out, the applicant's requesting nearly 45% of their home, or 1,168 square feet of their home, to be used for this home occupation. Now, based on the floor plan and the narrative that was provided by the applicant, it seems as though primarily the spaces that are being used for the day-to-day operations of the home, so the office space to run the business, for example, those will use much less than 1,100 square feet of the home. Where the square footage of the house being used for the home occupation kept getting increased were by incidental things. So it looked like on the floor plan, the hallway that connects where the office would be to the kitchen was included in that square footage calculation. The kitchen isn't going to be used to support any type of business. However, it will be used for employees of the home occupation to heat up their lunches during a workday. And so there are many incidental uses of the dwelling that were included in this square footage calculation, which increased that threshold from the 500 square foot limitation into the request that we have in front of us today. And then lastly, the third exception that was being requested by the applicant is associated with the number of vehicles that are allowed on site at any given time. The code standard says you can have a maximum of 5 vehicles associated with the home occupation on site, and the applicant's requesting up to 13 vehicles on site at any given time. This is largely due to the nature of the business. In this case, somebody like a hairdresser who has one customer who might come to the site each time wouldn't necessarily need to exceed this standard. Given the nature of the business to host larger groups or field trips or classes and groups of folks, the applicants requested to have more than those 5 vehicles on site at any time. I think it's important to note here that there are other standards within Section 822 that limit the number of vehicle trips to and from the property each day. And the applicant's not asking for an exception to have more vehicle trips to and from the property each day, just simply an exception to the number of vehicles that are on site at one time. So with that, that's what I've prepared for you for the presentation. To summarize, staff recommends approval based on compliance with substantially all of the criteria of Section 822, and based on the review criteria of 822-05 for why or when we could grant exceptions. I've outlined in the staff report why we've recommended approval even still with the 3 exceptions that the applicants requested as proposed. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. I just had a couple of clarification questions. On page 10 of your staff report, the numbering of the conditions of approval change. It goes to 14 and then back to 1, and there's no intervening letter or anything. Is that a typo, or is that intended that prior to conducting the home occupation, conditions are intended to be separate from the...
Oh, simply a typo in me never-ending, my never-ending battle with Word and its formatting. I apologize.
I totally understand. It's done the exact same thing. Just wanted to confirm. Page 11, number 3. It looks like that was a carryover because it talks about 172nd Avenue. Size distance at the driveways.
Yeah, it looks like that should have been eliminated, and number 7 is the applicable. Number 7 is the applicable one there. Yeah, I apologize.
Not a problem. And page 21. Under the finding under A1 says the applicants proposed to take exceptions to 2 criteria. And then the finding under A2 says the applicant proposes 3 exceptions. That may be because F, they're requesting 2 exceptions to criteria F. Is that why it says that?
No, it should say it's intended to list all 3.
So it should say 3 criteria and finding 1.
In the presentation.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Just wanted to check.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. That's the only questions I had. Ms. Martinez, I assume you're the applicant, and it's your opportunity to present your proposal, and if you have any issues with the staff report.
Thank you. I think Mel did a great job of presenting the application. And the only thing I would really add is about the first exception where we would have some limited external evidence of the business. I just wanted to note that with where the covered porch is situated on the property, it's not really visible to neighbors. It would not even really be visible to the vehicles that are passing by on Kelso Road because of the vegetation that we have on the property. And then on the north side, the house itself is blocking the view. So it really should not be much external evidence at all of the business of the education participants sitting under the porch.
Okay, and that porch is on the south side of the structure?
Right.
The residence?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Do you have any objection to the findings or conditions in the staff report?
I don't, and maybe one other thing, or this might have been covered later in today's hearing, but just wanted to note the letter that we got from the CPO organization regarding the third exception about the number of vehicles on the property. We've had overwhelming support, from our neighbors with the proposal of this business, and it was great to see, that letter as well, noting specifically that the CPO, does not have issue with, an increased number of vehicles given how much traffic there is on Kelso Road.
Yep, I did see that letter.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Thank
For
you.
the record, is there anybody else who wants to say anything about this application? We do still, it says one attendee. Oh, there we go. Brenda Abilene, if I'm pronouncing that right. Did you want to say anything about this application? If so, go ahead and click on the raise your hand icon. On my screen, it's at the bottom. I don't know if we're just giving you some time. There we go. Can we promote or unmute Ms. Abilene? There we go. Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, I just, sorry, I was joining and unjoining where I'm traveling and we're on the road. So
Not a problem. Can I get your name and address?
Sure, I'm Brenda Abilene. And my address is 28680 Southeast Ash Tree Place.
Southeast Ash Street.
Ash Tree Place.
Ash Tree. Thank you.
Freeways. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just in support of the business. I think it's great. And my only concern as I read through before I read through all the things was just knowing just the parking situation, because that corner of Frank and Kelso, when I go out there and try to turn left on Kelso, it's kind of a blind, there's a little bit of a rise. And so people come up over that hill kind of quickly. And so that was my only thing, is where the parking was going to be on site. Was that going to block any view of, traffic and that kind of thing? So that it looks like the places that were marked for the parking will be fine and it won't impede the view. So that was good.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Just interesting.
Anything further from staff?
No, we did have our development engineering department look at access to and from the property, and I know they worked quite a bit with the applicant to make sure that there's one driveway that's in and one driveway that's out, and making sure that that's a safe way to maneuver through the site and a safe way to access come off and come onto both of those streets given their classification. So it has been looked at and it has been reviewed, and our development engineering staff did still recommend their approval for this as well, with the conditions provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. Ms. Martinez, anything you want to add?
I think Mel covered it. Thank you.
Okay. You have the right to have me hold the record open for an additional week for you to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. Do you want to waive that right?
I'll waive that right.
Okay.
Thanks.
With that, I'll close the hearing and I'll close the record. Based on the findings in the staff report, this application does or will comply with the applicable approval criteria. So I will approve the application subject to those conditions. I will issue my decision within a maximum of 2 weeks. I'll send it to the county. The county will send it to parties of record. So that's the applicant and Ms. Abilene. And that concludes our hearing. Thank you. Have a good afternoon, all of you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks,
too.
everyone.